All right, welcome to the Your Coach podcast. I'm with a very special guest today, Dennis Barrett, legendary and longtime coach of McGill track and field. Hi, Dennis. How are you?
Hi, John. Good. You?
I'm great. I'm great. Really excited to have you on. I've had many requests to have you on. Every time someone comes on, they're like, "Hey, you're gonna get Dennis to come on." So
That's
yeah,
nice to hear.
yeah. People want to know. People want to hear from you. I think you've had such a long career. There must be some good stories. Um,
Lots of stories. Yeah.
yeah. But like, how about just can you start with telling us how you started in track? Like, how did that come out for you?
You know what? I did an undergraduate degree in the U.S. Ran track there, and didn't know what I wanted to do. And I kind of pondered staying in the U.S. Just for a weather situation and trying to
Right.
get stay out of the cold. And I ended up coming to McGill to do a master's. And basically, when I got here to McGill, I was still competing and uh, talked to the people up in phys ed. I had finished my undergraduate here, anyways, that summer. At one course I had to take to finish my degree, so I did it in the summer. And then, in talking to people in phys ed, after getting the master's program, they had no TA spots for me. So they suggested I go down and see if there was anything available in athletics.
Hmm.
So I came down to athletics and they said, we have a position for a track coach.
Okay.
So I said, that's great. And then I went away thinking I had the job and actually moved out thinking I had the job in terms of being a part-time coach. I didn't
Oh,
expect a lot of money.
yeah.
And much to my chagrin, when I came back and said, so when do I start? I said, you don't have the job. The Somebody else had hired somebody without telling the
Oh.
varsity person. so so I didn't have the job, and they hired. Did they hire? They hired this guy Raymond Borinel, um, who actually became my coach. He was a former U.S. military guy, and they hired Raymond Borinel because he'd been suggested by um, the intercollegiate person at Sherbrooke, Jean-Guy Willette.
Mhm.
And Ray didn't speak French, so I think he tried to get a job in Sherbrooke as a coach, but he didn't speak French. So Jean-Guy Willette then recommended him to Bob Dubois, who's the athletic director here.
Mhm.
So Bob wasn't aware that the job was offered to me by the intercollegiate person in charge of varsity at that point in time,
Mhm.
Butch Staples. So he wasn't aware of that. So it wasn't something that was done maliciously. It was done, that Bob thought he was basically getting the job done by accepting Raymond. So Ray became my coach, and when I got here, and ran for him for a while. He was very good, actually. He was very convincing. He works on the mental side of things and with things, and was very convincing that I could run fast. And I found that really positive, basically. So I thought he was pretty good there. So then a series of coaches. I forgot what happened with Ray after that, but I know he ended up leaving. I'm not sure why, basically, but might be something with his papers or something. I'm not exactly sure,
Mhm.
but it wasn't a full-time gig. And then my old track coach took over, who was Dale McKittrick.
Oh yeah, I've
Yeah,
heard that name because I think
yeah,
he coached at Concordia a bit too through the club on this. He had the club on the South Shore or something.
yeah. He probably had this club called the Viking Track Club,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
I knew Dale for years before that because I grew up on the West Island and I ran with a competing club, basically Lakeshore Pierrefonds Striders with Sandy Spence.
Okay.
But then later on, I'd switched to the Viking Track Club, basically. So I knew, and some of the athletes from the Viking were my teammates down in the U.S. Um,
What school in the U.S. did you go to?
I started off at New Mexico State in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and then transferred to a school in Tennessee by the name of Austin Peay State University. So Austin Peay was the name of a governor of Tennessee, and a lot of the guys I knew were going to school there. That's mainly why I transferred. But I must say I preferred the weather in New Mexico. Las Cruces was down in the desert. It was about 35, 40 minutes drive from El Paso, Texas. And at that time, UTEP had one of the strongest teams in the NCAA in terms of track and field, basically. So they had a lot of foreign athletes. Milt Canada was the high jumper there at the time, and this guy Bertland Cameron that ran for Jamaican guy, always good 400-meter guy for Jamaica that ran there as well, and a host of other foreigners, throwers from Norway or Scandinavian countries, cross country runners from Africa. So they were a very strong program, basically. They're nowhere near that now. So went to school there for a semester and then transferred to Austin Peay and graduated from there. Austin Peay, yeah. So it was a good experience, all in all. Yeah.
So now you're back at McGill with Dale McKittrick.
Yeah. So then Dale became a coach here, and he would kind of he would manage my training. I'd kind of write the program, and he'd look at my training, say, well, maybe take some of this off, put some of this on. And so, we'd go up to Cote d'Ivoire and train up there. So that's how that went. And then, so then after Dale left, then I became the coach. And I think I then coached for about a year and then went bobsledding and came back. And I had Robin Scott, who was the coach. Robin was also with the Viking Track Club. So she took over for me. Robin and a couple of people, Randy Marsh, was also one of my assistant coaches at that time, and Randy along with Robin took over the coaching about a year, and then I came back, decided not to go back bobsledding, and ended up started coaching again, basically. So that was about fall of 86, I think, bobsledding 85. So I started coaching again in the fall of 86.
And you didn't mention, but when you were running, you were a national medalist in the 600, right? I think you were second in the 600.
Yeah, second in the 600 in U of T. That's the only time U of T hosted U Sports. I was second in the 6 there. Thought I could have won it, and got boxed in the final. And by the time I got out of the box, it was just way too late. It was one of the most frustrating races of my life because I finished the race in 1:20.66 and wasn't even breathing because I got caught in that box for so long that I couldn't break out. If I'd pushed anybody, I would have been DQ'd. So, I might have been able to win the race, but I would have gotten no medal. So that was pretty frustrating. But it was one of those races where you hit your peak, and basically your peak was just bang on. It was just, I couldn't have hit a better peak that day. So then, so from there I started. After that, I started coaching at McGill. Ran after bobsledding. I raced again for McGill, and still have a 4x2 record here on the board with Jimson Lee, this guy Orlando Houghton, more famous known as Earl, and then another guy Pedro Bradshaw. So we still have the 4x2 record. And my sprints coach is about to break it this year. So
okay. What's the record?
Huh?
What's the record? What is it?
It's 1:27:92. 1:27:92. Yeah. So many guys have tried and failed, including Hank Palmer. But I always tell them that records are made to be broken. So it's wide open, basically.
Yeah, for sure. What track did you set it on?
That was in Sherbrooke.
Okay, and that the old Sherbrooke track.
The old Sherbrooke track.
That was a pretty fast.
Yeah, it was a pretty fast track. So it was, that helped, but it was still a good run when all was said and done. Yeah, it's a pretty good run, basically. And I've done well there at Sherbrooke. Ran some fast times at Sherbrooke, basically indoors, and I think I finished got a medal in the national championships there. That would have been the CTFA track and field championships probably back in those days. Yeah, so I got a medal there in the 800.
No, nice.
So I think Ian Newhouse won that race. I might have been either, trying to remember if I was second or third. And then there's a guy, I suffered some injury problems after that, Daniel Gerard. I don't know if you know that name, but he was a good runner for Sherbrooke. So I think he was in third. So yeah, so that was, so I've had some good meets up there in Sherbrooke, basically, especially more indoors than the outdoor track.
Yeah. So you say you started coaching, like how, were there any specific coaches or mentors who kind of influenced like how you coach? Like how did you, when you started coaching, how did you kind of know what to do and how to do it? You just started taking your own plans, or what, you mentioned the mental side from Raymond, like how did these things influence what your approach is to coaching?
So when I started coaching, I took a blend of what my coaches, the coaches that had coached me. I took a lot of what they had, and I thought when I started, was I fully versed in coaching? Probably not, and but taking what they did and applying it to the athletes that I was coaching, that helped me because I kept careful logs of my training plans through the years. But my training plan, I ran cross country in the US as well. So I ran cross country here in high school. Never ran cross country. I came up from Jamaica, so had no clue what cross country was. So got introduced to cross country here in high school, and it was quite terrifying for me. Yeah, basically. But I love the training. I love the training that we did. We trained, I went to Lindsay Place High School, and we trained at, most of our cross country training was down at Terracotta Park. So that was really a nice, Sandy Spence was my coach at that point in time.
Yeah.
So that was very helpful. And then I had a series of different coaches after that. And eventually, from my college coach, picked up some things from him as well, Joey Haynes at Austin Peay. And so it was down in New Mexico. My coach there as well would drive us out into the desert to run hills and stuff like that. And so picked up a blend of different things and then tried to apply them. What I did was, when I started coaching, I just kind of applied what I was getting, be it good or bad. And a lot of it was basically, we train hard 3 days a week. As the years went by, started reading and just started looking at my athletes more and realized that 3 days a week of hard training might be too much. So then I kind of dialed it back to 2 days. And in cross country, I've dialed it back to just one hard training a week plus the race. So if they're racing, I consider that,
Sure. Well, in university, everybody's racing almost every weekend. So that's like a hard day every week almost, right?
Yeah, except for now, you have some club athletes that they don't race every weekend, and I don't think you can race every weekend, but I think what's important is that in cross country, it's more important to train with your teammates than in track and field. There's just so much more that's based on positioning in cross country rather than time, right? Because the courses are all different. So knowing where you are in comparison to your teammate is very important.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get into that because that was one of my later questions. It seems to be like a Montreal thing where, there's club athletes, and because their club is in town and they're going to university in town, they want to keep training with their coach. And how have you approached that, over the years? Because I know in different situations, sometimes it's okay, and sometimes you've said, no, I want people to train with the group. So how do you deal with that? Because it seems like, in the NCAA or the rest of Canada, that would just not even happen.
Yeah, that's a brilliant question because it's always been, how do you deal with that in a big city like Montreal, right? And so what I've done through the years is I've allowed some flexibility, and the one rule that I ask the athletes to respect is that you do one hard session a week with your teammates at McGill. We had Matthew Baudette, and he did respect that, and I thought that that was great of him, because to come and train with the guys here didn't do a whole lot for him because he was way out front. So, so if he'd come to me and say, well, it's not really helping me, I probably would have given him more latitude to say, okay, just do your training with your guys and come over and do an easy run with the guys, so the guys get to know who you are. But he was, he'd come over on a Monday or a Wednesday whenever we had a hard session, and that would be very helpful. So that is the one caveat I ask the athletes to do, is to come over and train with their teammates, because I remember hearing a story some time ago, a long time ago, and hopefully I don't get chastised for it, but I think somebody told me that they heard they were at an OUA meet, and they heard somebody introducing the team members of a relay team that went to the same school, and they didn't know each other.
Oh,
in the 4x8, so they'd never, the members of the relay team are getting ready to run the OUA, and they never knew each other, basically, because they're training. It happens in big cities. So the problem we face with that question, John, is that it's more prevalent in big cities. So Montreal, Toronto, I don't know about Vancouver, but I know it happens a lot between Montreal and Toronto, where you have the options of multiple clubs being in town. So, for example, Saint Laurent Select, Vancouver Plus, your club before Ville Marie, and so I think the key thing is that, and I always say to the athletes and to the coaches, I don't want your athlete year round. I just want your athlete to help the university program, because the university programs are putting a lot of money into track. And the question I got asked many years ago, I'm not sure if you were at that meeting, but one of the questions that came up in this meeting was, I remember the person that asked it was he became the director at UBC, was from Laval, Gilles.
Oh, yeah, Gilles Lapin.
Yeah, Gilles Lapin.
Yeah.
And Gilles Lapin asked the question and said, what's the purpose of track in university? Because if people are going to just focus on their clubs, then why bother have track in university? So I try to point that out to the athletes, that the universities have been putting a lot of money into track and field and cross country. And, let's try not to just piss on them and say, it's not important at the university level. And what a lot of these kids need to understand is that sometimes university level is the highest level they're going to go. And it's more fun for them, actually, at the university level, because they have their teammates backing them up. And going to the youth sports national championships is more invigorating than going to an AC championships, because at the Athletics Canada championships, you're basically by yourself. It's you running for you for the most part. Whereas in a team situation, you have the team behind you, and the kind of spirit that you get at the youth sports championships is phenomenal. With the cheering that I've seen through the years, right? So, so I think that a lot of going back years ago, we had a girl by the name of Bridget Nima that was going to McGill, and she was being coached by a coach in Montreal. Again, I won't call his name, but
you can name names. It's fine. You can name names. That's okay.
That was Franco Di Battista was her coach.
Oh, yeah, Franco.
And so we were training at Cloutier. So Bridget came to McGill, and she was a good 800-meter runner, and I wanted her to run for McGill. So I got her a scholarship to the Fondation Québécoise, and they gave her a nice scholarship. But then I don't think her coach wanted it. Her coach was afraid he was gonna lose her. And all you had to do was say to me, Dennis, I want my athlete back. And I'd say, Franco, I don't want to steal your athlete. She's your athlete. If I start trying to steal people's athletes, then that word will get around, and nobody will want to send their kids to compete for McGill.
Exactly.
So it turned out we ended up taking the money away. And what coaches do, they kind of promise the kids are going to get to the Olympics. And she never got to the Olympics, but should have been an excellent university athlete, And you can still try to get to the Olympics, but that's like some guy making it out of McGill to the pros, and trying to make a living in football.
Well, who's made it to the Olympics out of RCQ? Janae, Chuck, GS? That's
Yeah,
three
some of
guys
the
I can
guys
think of,
from
right?
Laval. Yeah, some
Yeah.
of the guys from Laval have made it.
And
I
then the,
thought Ali Khan had a good chance to
yeah,
make it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
The injuries curtailed her, but
yeah,
she was, I thought she had a great chance to make the 2008 games in Beijing.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a very small number. Like I've always thought,
Yeah.
it's the experience, right? And
Yes.
whenever I've had, coaching club athletes that go to university when I wasn't at Concordia, like I just say just go with the team. Like I don't wanna coach you during the university year
Yeah.
because you should be like with like Christina Lobasso, like when she went to
Yeah.
McGill, I was like, well,
Yeah.
you should go there and
Right.
be
Right.
part of that team,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like in the same, I had some kids go to U to M, but like it was weird because the U to M coach didn't want to coach them. He was
Oh,
like,
is that
no,
right?
you should, yeah, you should stay with your club. And I was like, but
Right.
no, like yeah. So that at that program, it's a bit different. It seems like they had a lot of like different clubs and they were just sort of
Yeah.
letting them be. But I think it's a bit
Yeah.
different now with Olivier. I think he's more trying to build a team, but
Yeah. It's still, most of their athletes at UM come from San Ross Select, right?
yeah, yeah.
So they're coached by the coach at San Ross Select. And I've always tried to have a good rapport, like with all the coaches, Samuel Marion, Ashraf.
Mhm,
For me, it's basically keeping that line of communication open and just letting guys know, listen, I'm not here to steal your athlete,
mhm,
and I don't want to steal your athlete. Because I used to coach year round, and I burnt myself out coaching year round.
mhm,
So at some point, quite a few years ago, I decided, well, I could coach in the summer, but they'd have to be very good athletes and committed athletes,
mhm,
and basically that they want to be there and not just there because they just want to run.
mhm,
So I realized that you can't coach year round and keep your sanity sometimes.
mhm,
And I think one fall I was totally depressed and realized that I hadn't taken a vacation and kind of putting time and effort
mhm.
into athletes who were not giving the time and effort back,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
So it's and you got to realize that at a point is that what I want?
Mhm.
It's just to give people time and effort and they're not giving it back, basically.
Yeah,
And some
for
of the
sure.
kids at university, they don't want to train in the summertime. They expect to be good
Yeah.
by taking 4 months off, right? So
Mhm,
4 or 5 months off, because if they finish training in February
mhm,
and they stop training then, and then they
mhm.
come back in the fall, then they won't be. The rest of the country will have passed them by quite a lot, right?
Yeah, yeah, for
So
sure.
the development will not be very good, and that's what a lot of them don't understand.
Yeah.
So a lot of kids do it for the fun of it. They
Mhm,
want to have fun, and that's how they see it. Yeah.
mhm,
So it's a battle. That's been a big battle for me here at McGill, is getting people to understand that if you want to be on the team, it's not a welfare system. You
mhm,
have to train and compete in the summertime. And for the kids that do well, you take the guys
mhm.
from Laval, and that's always respected Laval for that, is that their kids, not all of them, but many of them are committed to the program. So, Charles Philibert Thibodeau, Jean-Simon de Gagne, all those guys have been very committed to the program and very committed to the university program as well, not just for summer, but they give their all to the university program. And they have like JSD is an exception. They have guys who are in med school who are there for 5 years. Other people are not in med school, but they're there for 5 years. We very rarely get people here for 5 years at McGill.
Mhm,
If they're from Quebec, case in point, Tambra Dunn,
mhm,
she only spent 3 years here, right?
mhm,
So whereas most times at other universities they'll spend 4 years, and
mhm,
Sarah Ali Khan we lucked out on because she was doing a master's and PhD. Linda Thayer we lucked out on; she was in med school. So we have a couple of those people. But when you look at the average age of McGill, we're one of the youngest teams
mhm.
in the conference by age,
Yeah.
right? So
You get a lot
we're
of
looking.
people from Ontario and the States too that are a year younger, like 17 instead of
Yeah, yeah,
19,
that's
or
right. Coming from the
18.
rest of the country, and then you have, a couple of years ago, Montreal's program. There was a lot of their average age was quite high because a lot of guys came back to run there, like that were finished at other schools or done 4 years or whatever, and came back to race.
Mhm.
So that's one of the things that we face, is that we have a very young team.
Mhm.
And in track, it works, yeah or nay. You have your exceptions,
Mhm.
but you can have a kid who's just as good at. There's a kid that broke the junior record in the 300 year on November 30th, runs for CADL.
Mhm.
So that kid is maybe, under 18 or something, and he ran 34 points. So you can't really say, if you're young, you can't run well. Doesn't mean that he's going to run, 31 something by the time he's 22, but
Mhm.
he's developed well at
Mhm.
an early age, right? So
Yeah.
that's part of it, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So you kind of mentioned about, realizing that you were maybe burning out and stuff and taking some time off. What other advice did you have for like young coaches, people who, want to get into coaching? Like what's it really like? Like what did they need to know?
I think what you need to know is you need to decide if you want to go into coaching, how are you going to go into it, and if you take a guy like Jake
Yeah.
Brennan. He's not super young, but he's just getting into coaching right now.
Mhm.
You've got to realize, if you have a family, it's not that easy. All
Yeah.
right, because a lot of times you're traveling on weekends,
Yeah.
and if you have a family, it's really tough. And I've talked to other coaches. Richard Crevier was coaching year round. I remember he came back from the Sydney Olympics, and we had cross country. Can't remember if it was in Trois-Rivières or somewhere, but cross country, the whatever it was called back then, it wasn't RSCQ, QUAA.
Mm.
And he said to me, I'm exhausted. And I said, Richard, you're coaching year round. You're
Yeah.
not Superman. You can't do that. You can't do that and expect to be, to keep your sanity, basically.
Mhm.
And it's not only that, it's you're dealing with issues with athletes and facilities and administration. And it's a battle right around. It's not just, you're not just coming out and coaching. You're doing administrative stuff, because I think it was Richard that said he became a full-time coach, and he spent less time coaching
Mhm.
as a full-time coach than he did as a part-time coach, because of the administrative work that's put on your desk, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So it's not, you have recruiting. There's so many factors, and then dealing with issues with athletes. It
Mhm.
just multiplies. So if you're a young coach, I think you got to think it through and decide, you know, what you want to do, but be careful going into it, because you have to decide, if I'm going to start a family and I'm in my 20s, I've got to realize that at some point I'm going to have kids, and I want to spend time with my kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you need to really look into that and make sure the club you're going into, or the program you're going into, club, university, that you can have time away,
Mhm.
and the club will be able to move on while you're having your time away, and then you can go back after, right?
Yeah.
So you got to suss that out, make sure that that is a possibility.
For sure. Well, that's where I'm at right now. I mean, I'm, coaching very little
Yeah,
track and more kids
yeah,
hockey, stuff like that right now.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
that's what I want to do. So it's
Right.
not
Yeah.
you
Well, you got to make
choose.
you have to make a choice, right? And that's what you've done. You've made the choice to take care of your kids. I think that's very important, because you need to spend time with your kids. And Jake is kind of having that. He's got a 6-year-old daughter, and he
Mhm.
said she won't be six again. I say, you're damn
Yeah.
right, she'll be
Yeah.
six again.
Yeah.
So and the university program is a little more intense.
Mhm.
So so basically, you have to make that decision. I think when I was younger, I didn't have a family in terms of kids, so I lived, I ate, I slept, track and field.
Mhm.
Now I've kind of pulled back a bit, because I got to keep my sanity.
Mhm.
And I think you need more time for yourself, and I think it's also important to plan your schedule, that you get time off. That's very important, um, because you can invest a lot, but if you're not getting that investment back, it's not worth it.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about running now. What
Hmm.
what do you think that let's say a 1500-meter athlete needs to do to run fast? If someone comes to you and says, Dennis, I want to run a fast 15, how are you going to get them there?
Well, I think it's always running is a combination of things. I kind of, I tell my team it's like baking a cake. That if you want to bake a cake, you need a recipe. And if you don't want to use a recipe, you can always start from scratch. But you can always learn from others that have been successful. So I think there's no need trying to reinvent the wheel, because others have been successful before me. And so what I try to do is I read, I try to study what other people have done, and basically steal and borrow ideas from other people that, will make a successful, try to make someone successful. I think the number one thing is, first of all, you need somebody who's committed, because you're not always motivated to go and train every day or as many days as you like per week. So I think the number one thing is you're looking for someone who's committed, someone who has talent, because you need to start with some talent to get to a high level. And you need a combination of mileage, intervals, tempo work, and easy run days. What I introduced back in the 90s here at McGill was I started introducing, I kind of, looked at my kids and I said, you know what, let's have a day where we go to the pool. And so we used to meet 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. And what I did with our kids was I said, okay, Alex Hutchinson was here at the time. And I said, we're going to go on Thursdays, we're going to do a med ball session. And then after the med ball session, we'll go to the pool. So at that time, McGill had two pools. We had the pool here at Curry, and we had a pool down at the music building. It doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, they basically destroyed that pool or just demolished that building to make a new music building there. So we would go to the pool. The girls loved it. Because for them, we got the pool, especially when we got that pool down there, that was kind of our pool to ourselves. So just walk down the street to that pool, and they just loved the fact that it was something different. They loved the med ball. They loved the pool session. Hutch was a little bit skeptical, and I said to him, if you think it's going to take something away from you, I'm giving you the flexibility that if you want to run that day, run in the morning, and then come and do the med ball, go for easy run, come and do the med ball and the pool session. The rest of the guys they bought into the pool session and loved it. So I think you need for a 1,500 meter runner, they've got to work on speed. They've got to work on, their anaerobic capacity. They've got to work on their aerobic capacity. And they definitely will need some strength work in there, be it in the weight room, trying to build speed, basically, because, I've met some athletes here that have been, one of the most talented girls I've met here was a soccer player that ran track for us. And this girl could run with our cross-country girls. And I think the only thing that stopped her from breaking the 300 meter record was when she came out for track, she had a hernia and she had basically injury, a groin injury as well. So she said, I asked her, can you tell the difference? She said, yes, I can tell the difference between two. She ended up getting us a medal and helping our team get a 4x8 medal at nationals. Alexandra Morin-Boucher, but probably one of the most talented girls I've seen, along with Sarah Ali Khan, Linda Thayer. Sarah was one of the most natural girls I've seen run, and so was this girl, Alexandra Morin-Boucher. So basically, Alex was from, Morin-Boucher was from, what's that place called? And it's just past Joliet, but she lived past Joliet. There used to be a race up there that I used to go with Cindy New. It'll come back to me in a little while, but she was from all the way up there. So when she finished at McGill, I wanted her to still do track, but her boyfriend was living in Joliet, her CJEP sweetheart. So for her to come to Montreal was quite a trek. And I don't think she felt comfortable at that point in time to join another club because she was close to Repentigny. Right. Where she could have ran with them. But I think she enjoyed her time at McGill. But I thought she was a girl that would definitely make the Canadian team. And I thought Sarah had the potential to make Team Canada. and not only make the team, but to do well. I thought she could be an Olympic 800-meter finalist because I saw her run 600 in Windsor, where that year she won 3 golds in the 6, the 1,000, and the 15. But what was impressive was her 600-meter run, where one of the girls dropped out of the 300 to try and win the 6. And I think Sarah blew by her probably at about after a lap and something lap, and so they started at 2. Sarah probably blew by her at about 350, and just ran away with the race and ran sub 130 on that track at Windsor by herself. So when I saw that race, I thought this girl is ready to go. So very talented. So it's a combination of going back to the question you asked me, how do you train someone like that? So I look at the ingredients. If I'm baking a pound cake, I know I'm going to need flour, I'm going to need water, I'm going to need maybe some other ingredients, and then I got to put it in the oven. And I got to make sure that there's enough recovery time, that the ingredients are put in somewhat the right amount, the right quantity. It could be off in a little bit, but then once I put them in the oven, I got to make sure that the oven, that if it calls for an hour and a half, 90 minutes to bake this cake, I can't leave it in there for 2 hours. I'm going to over bake it. And then if I take it out at night at an hour, it's going to be under baked as well, right? So it's finding the ingredients, and with the ingredients in track and field, you're talking about interval training, aerobic training, speed, distance, and vital importance is rest. Very, very, and nutrition. Of course, you can't overlook nutrition. So you need all those factors combined. And with all that, and I didn't know all that stuff when I was a young runner myself. I wish I knew more about that type of stuff when I was young. And one of the things I always said to myself, I needed a Charlie Francis type coach, or somebody that with a little more intuition into the sport to help me. I did have good coaches along the way. I can't dismiss them. But I only learned about Olympic lifting when I started training for bobsledding, which I thought, had I learned that earlier, it would have been very helpful towards my development as a runner. So so in terms of developing a 1,500-meter runner, you're looking for some talent, and then you're looking to get a certain amount of mileage, be it and the run. It also, as you know, depends on the runner, how much can they handle. So I do use cross training, and I do emphasize cross training quite a lot. We've had 2 athletes with stress fractures right now, and my question to them is, why are you doing so much running on the pavement or on the concrete?
With the stress fracture?
Yeah. No, before, to get the stress fracture.
Yeah. Well, especially with the mountain right there. I mean, you can run on soft surfaces. You don't have to run on the sidewalk.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. I said, you know what? When I got to McGill, I didn't know that path existed from here up. I raced on Mount Royal in high school, but I didn't know this path existed. And I said, once I found this path, I stayed out of the streets. The only time I went to the streets was on that shoulder between darkness and snowfall. In the old days where it was real winters, and you wait for your first snowfall to come in, right? So that's what that's when I'd go on the sidewalks, but I'd make sure that there's sprinkle that you'll have some precipitation that come down. If I can't get out early enough to run on the mountain, I'd go around University of Montreal, and but I'd make sure there's some sand on the sidewalks, and I'd slide into it, especially if I'm going downhill. Just make sure I'm sliding a little bit when I hit, because I suffered from bad shin splints. So basically, I try to, some of my athletes say, well, we go down to the canal. I said, well, how do you get there? We run down, we run back. So that's a lot of pavement to hit before you get to the canal. But we have Mount Royal right here, right? So
and it's downhill. It's downhill to get to the canal too. So you're kind of
exactly pounding up, and you're not warmed up yet, basically. But so I try to encourage them to do as much of their mileage as much as possible on the mountain, basically.
The
on the
canal's
side.
all right though, because you can run a long way on the side on the grass. Like I do a lot of running there, and I try to not run on the bike path. I try
Yeah,
to run on the
yeah,
side. But yeah, you
yeah.
got to get there first, and you have to run through the city. So
That's right. And some people are strong enough, right? Because if one of the disadvantages that we have here is that if you're born in a country where you can run barefooted, where you can run around barefooted, those people don't have any shin splints. They hardly have any lower limb problems. But because we get put in shoes so young, our feet never get a chance to develop properly. So we end up with shin splints. And then now they're making those really soft shoes. And I'm looking at my guys running, and they're all over pronating because the shoes are so soft, right? So it's not enough support, and you need to feel the ground a little bit. And if you don't have proper support, a lot of them are getting a lot of problems like shin splints, knee problems. It's manifesting itself in the knee because there's so much rock and roll going on in the shoes, right? And
yeah.
I've had that before too with Reebok. I got rid of Reebok because I noticed I was getting some wicked pain on one side of the leg. Remember going to the Nationals in London one year for cross country, and I went in the pool there at the hotel we were staying, and I ran barefooted because the pool wasn't super deep. You could run in the water. So I ran barefooted for at least 45 minutes in that pool, back and forth, back. Absolutely no problem. I came back here, put my shoes on, went for a run, problem started. So I just brought the shoes back. They're brand new shoes. I brought the shoes back to the store and said, I don't, these are not going to work for me. So I think you really need to make sure that the surface you're running on is good. We have one of our top girls, Sienna Matheson. She got hurt, stress fracture, and it was manifested more by the course out in Vaudreuil-Dorion, that Saint Lazare, that sandy course.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to Doris, and what's his name, Philippe Monod-Cartier, said he hurt his back there. Again, I'm going like, why did they choose these courses? I think we need to do I've been talking to Derek Covington about that recently. We need to really suss these courses out and make sure that they're, you could see the kids running that course, not my kids, other kids, trying to avoid the sand as much as possible, because who likes that feeling of taking one step and your back gets tight, everything gets tight. It's, we're not doing a sand dune race, right? So I think it's important. So basically, I try to get them to stay off the pavement, and in terms of the development in the 1,500 meters, we have a lot of kids like that here, and it's just being, I'm an advocate of cross training, because you can see what triathletes were able to do by not running every day, right? So you can get some good base work in by going for a bike ride, as long as you don't fall off your bike like I do. So basically, you can get that going, and you can go to the pool, and you can, row or do something that's going to take the impact off the legs, right?
Yeah.
So that's important. Yeah.
We did a lot of pool running in the 90s too, at Waterloo with Brent. Brent McFarlane was big. He was big on pool running. We'd like twice a week pool run.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Talking about Brent became a very good friend of mine, and we started doing training camps with University of Waterloo,
San Diego.
Yeah,
San Diego.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot. I learned a lot from Brent. I really, really did learn a lot from him. He was a very good mentor, and I really did learn a lot from him. I missed the guy. Learned a lot from him in San Diego. And we'd have, evenings where we just sat around and talked track and field. Brent, myself, other coaches that were there. It was just a good way to learn. How does he do things? What can I take from him? And the takeaway that I've had from him has been very good, right? So basically, and Brent, the person that helped a lot of those coaches back then was Gerard Mock. Gerard Mock was from Poland, basically. Irina Shawinska's coach. And Gerard Mock brought a lot of principles to Canada, basically, the A's and B's and that type of stuff. And, so he was, back then, it was a better system, because Gerard Mock never took sides with anybody. He was a national coach, and he did a good job helping everybody. And the system was different then as well. The system has changed a bit right now. So basically, and what we lack here in Canada, I think one of the biggest things we lack is that we don't have a warm weather island or location somewhere where athletes can go to, because I think that's really what we're lacking, where, there's a time where Canada could have annexed the Cayman Islands.
Yeah.
And I thought that would have been a good thing, because you can set up a camp down there, and you pay with Canadian dollars, whatever. But we don't have that. That I think is still one of our toughest things. So all our athletes will have to go off and be with different coaches around the globe, basically, or down in the US. And we don't have a place where they can go in a warm weather and it's Canadian and say, we're down here for training. You can have a doctor on site, physiotherapy on site, the whole 9 yards, nutrition, everything there, right?
Yeah. So
they try to start, I don't know if you try to start those hubs out in B.Sc, Victoria, in Halifax. And the problem with those hubs is that it's hard for them to work, because if you're coaching an athlete, I'm coaching an athlete, and they're accustomed to what we're doing, then we send them out to that hub. There's a lot of kind of, second guessing. Is this working for me? And the athlete might not feel as confident, because you have a generic program now, or not even generic, but one program for all. It shouldn't be bad, but the athlete is more accustomed to John LaFranco coaching them or Dennis Barrett coaching them.
Yeah.
They can tell you to go fuck yourself, and you're still friends or whatever, but one day it's just the way it is. I don't like that training. Okay, we'll change it. So I think the kind of rapport you develop with the person that got you to that level is very important, basically.
Yeah. So, no, for sure, that makes sense. Like, I think it's I've worked with, so obviously Mel, the highest level athlete I've worked with, and we had a good relationship with Heather, and getting Mel to be able to go to Arizona and do stuff. And then when she went to the World, she went to the camps and stuff, and it was great. Like, even she told me she had a workout in St. Moritz, I guess, and Glenroy was out there with her on the bike.
Okay.
I was impressed. Like, he's out there, he's with everybody. So I thought that was really good.
Oh, fantastic.
And they were really, they communicated really well. Like, and I talked to Trent a lot about like the transition, like altitude, heat, and everything like that. And it was good. But it's, it takes a lot of communication, and with Mel to know that, like, yes, I'm talking to all these people, and so when they say, do this or whatever, like, we've talked about it, it's all good. And to make sure that the athlete has the confidence, because I think that's what you said, right? It's not the program is like whatever, like it can work, but it's the athlete needs to be confident in it to make it happen.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, definitely. Confidence is very, very important. That goes a long way in running. And I've seen athletes lose their confidence, and it starts eroding immediately once they lose their confidence. Yeah, it's not easy at all. Not easy. So no, you need that confidence.
Yeah. So thinking about, you're talking about how things are different. How have athletes changed over the years? I feel like even for me, in the less time of coaching, I've seen, sort of shifts in the last bit. Like, are you seeing, athletes being different these days?
I think one of the things that has been has changed is the internet is more available. And some athletes are going to the internet and feeling that they can coach themselves. It's not that easy. I think what has happened in the U.S. was a hotbed of milers and stuff like that for a while, and they still have very good runners down there. There's so many of them anyway. So many people down there, over 300 million people, compared to about 10% of that is our Canadian population. But I think what has happened there, everybody's tried to adopt the African way, right? That if they can do all this mileage, then that's what we need to be good, is to adopt what they've done. They're accustomed to it, because if you get up every morning and you run to the store or you run to school or whatever, your body gets used to that, and it adapts to that. And so to get that same kind of mileage is not necessarily good for us here. So, and we know now that a lot of these people who are successful, a lot of them are using performance enhancing substances. a lot, and you know, it's always nowadays we're always skeptical. Is that person clean?
Mhm.
We're always skeptical when somebody becomes good. Is that person clean?
Mhm.
And one of the things I've said lately, and it's towards the sprint world, is that I can say that without reservation that Audrey Leduc is clean.
Mhm.
I can say that without reservation.
Mhm.
Basically without, because I've seen her come through the years.
Mhm.
I can't say that about a lot of other sprinters
Mhm.
that they're clean. And
Mhm.
so, and even in the distance part of things, look how many people are testing positive, right? Because there's so much money to be won.
Mhm.
And so that is always in the back of your mind, is that person clean? Is such and such a person clean?
Yeah.
So I think what has changed now is what I've seen right now too is that a lot of athletes, especially here in Quebec, what they do is just chase times.
Mhm.
The coach is setting them up to go. Everybody's got to have a rabbit, and it's just chasing times. So I find that sometimes they don't know how to compete.
Mhm.
You know, they're not. You get in the race, and if there's not a rabbit, you're pissed off because there's no rabbit in the race,
Mhm.
and you expect to always be in a race where people are faster than you. Well, get in a race where you're the fastest person and take it out yourself.
Mhm.
If you want to go fast and you run fast, if you want to race, then you race. But I think,
Yeah.
you know, it's not just about going and chasing fast times.
Mhm.
Look at what happened to Ingebrigtsen last year in the
Yeah.
in the Olympics this past summer, right?
Yeah.
He went out and he just gave the race away by figuring I can outrun these guys.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, he put a lot of pressure on himself,
Mhm.
and you know, got beaten by the U.S. guy, whatever his name was, basically. So I think what has changed is just also having athletes understand that it's not just about everybody wants to get there yesterday, and I think that's also part of it. And there's that development process that people need to go through in sports, like in other things. Some athletes develop faster than others. You
Mhm.
still have to give yourself that chance. That
Mhm.
if you're not running, let's say 3:45 by the time you're 17 or 18, don't panic. Just
Yeah. Yeah.
take your time. Some people develop faster than others. It
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily mean that because you ran 3:45 at age 17 that you're going to run 3:31 at age
Yeah.
20, 24 or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah. That
So
might
I
be
think
it. 3:45 might be it. Yeah.
exactly, because some people develop quicker than others. So I think that is also part of it, is not trying to be someone or something that you're not, but just if you committed to the system, stay with it, work hard. But like in anything else, we need to change things at times, because as that saying goes, can't do the same thing and expect a different result, right? We got to
Mhm.
change something after a while. So I
Mhm.
think that is probably the essence that we need to look at. If somebody's not improving, we have to analyze why they're not improving. What's lacking in the program, basically, and try and make that adjustment. So that's what I try to do, is try to look at that, and I always feel that speed is the number one component you need um, going up the ladder. And if you want to be a world class 1500-meter runner, you have to have good 400-meter speed. You have to have good 200-meter speed. You have to have good 800-meter speed, because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, if you're not there in that speed component, it's really hard to do
Yeah.
well. You know,
Yeah.
that's so. I think the change is there in terms of um, we have one thing that I look out a lot for is basically uh, our girls on becoming anemic, right?
Mhm.
And I think I think one of the best stories I've heard in track and field was the Alberto Salazar story, because I was at school in the States when Alberto became good, won the New York City Marathon. I was at
Mhm.
Austin Peay when he won the New York City Marathon, and he was a 10K cross country and NCAA runner coming out of University of Oregon, and basically it was himself and Rudy Chapa. They formed a dynamic duo there
Mhm.
that were really good. And his comment after he won the New York City Marathon, I think he had gotten the record, but measured the course, it was short. So they took that record away. But I think what happened there was that he came out of that and he said, look what I just did for the marathon. Can you imagine if I really trained? But he said, I won that marathon by doing 10K training with the occasional long run thrown in. And he said, just imagine what I can do if I train for a marathon. So I started training for a marathon, and little by little things started going south, right? Just started falling apart. So he went on stuff like Prozac and all that and everything. And the person, I don't know if you know that, but the person who found out what was wrong with him was a Canadian doctor. That was Doug Clements' wife, Dr. Diane Clements. She was the one that found out. She got a sample of his blood or something like that, some blood work. And he was lacking in ferritin. Nobody looked at his serum ferritin level. And she was the one that identified what he was missing was his serum ferritin level was low. And so he went through all those years going on Prozac, trying to figure out what was wrong, and it was just a simple thing that the ferritin level was low. His ferritin level was low. So increasing your mileage doesn't necessarily mean speak to success. Alberto then became a coach, and you know what happened with his Oregon project out there, basically. So he was massaging the guys with better be careful that doesn't sue me, with testosterone cream, right? Because all the volume they were doing, when you go to sleep, your body's not replenishing itself properly. Because you're just abusing it, and that's what it basically comes down to, abuse. And you're doing all this volume and everything, and then so he came up with a lot of good ideas as well. Not to throw him under the bus, but he came up with that treadmill that came back from space and used it. Then they had the underwater treadmill. I had hip problems and didn't realize that they brought a treadmill here that they put some pads around your legs, they pump it up. And I could run because it was taking the full weight off my legs. I could actually run normally with this. We couldn't afford to pay that to buy that system here, but it was really, so he's come up with some genius ideas. And what a lot of kids will try to do is emulate, read what somebody's doing. Like at Marcus last year, and he was looking at that 800-meter guy from the States, Nick Simmons' program. But Nick Simmons is at another level. You can't just jumping and start trying to do Nick Simmons' program. You have to work towards it. So I think what happens is people look at what's happening in Oregon and say, well, I should be doing that kind of mileage. Number one, they're going to school. Most of our kids are in school. They have the stresses of going to school and social life, social media and all that. And then you're trying to do the program of a guy that runs for the Oregon Project. That is, they get massages on demand. They get blood lactate tested. They get everything tested, lickety split. So, and they get followed. They get nutrition. They have nutrition, and they can sleep. They go for a run. They come back, take a shower, whatever they want to do. So I think you can't really just employ that and expect to be good. So I think that's some of the things that our kids are getting involved with. They're trying to do more and not understanding the intricacies of what they need to do.
Right. Like if you bring up the stress, you have to bring up the recovery as well. And these pros have all this extra recovery, but that's not what not doing like Instagram posts about how much they're sleeping or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And the massages they're getting, massage on demand and the nutrition and all the rest. So, if you're a student at McGill, you got to go and buy your own groceries, chances are. You got to go and study. There's a lot to do, right? You got your social life. You got a boyfriend. You break up with your boyfriend. You break up with your girlfriend. Just a lot of things that you have to learn to manage. And I think that's part of what our kids need to understand is, and taking care of themselves is, I always tell them that taking care of themselves is the most important thing they can do, because if you go low on iron, it takes a while for that level to build that level back up. And that's so I'm really on them about their nutrition. And I think it was Jessica Ennis Hill that I think she came up with an app that deals with the menstrual cycle.
Okay.
because she said, had I known more about my menstrual cycle when I was training, I would have trained differently.
Mm.
And I think that's very important for female athletes. So if I always tell my athletes, if you come to practice and, you know, it's that time of the month, don't be shy to let me know, because I'll tell you not to practice, go on the bike, do something else, or take the day off. If there's a period where it really bothers you, you know, it's part of life. It's part of life, and we have to deal with it. So I think it's just being more in tune with themselves. Leslie Gold was good at that. Leslie Gold would, she trained with me for a year, and she said, Dennis, don't bother me today. It's a water buffalo day. We have a laugh about it. I've never heard it explained that way before. But how much clearer can you make that it's a water buffalo, don't bother me today? And invariably she'd run well, but she's just she's putting it out there that this is what's happening today. And, you know, and then I thought she was great as well. She said to me, she said, Dennis, it's not you. I'm finished school now. I can't have a coach, because she said to me, said, Paul, what's the guy in the West End? Paul Sharon.
Paul Sharon, yeah.
She said Paul Sharon was my first coach, so don't take it personally. so
Understood.
That was
Understood.
yeah. I totally understood when she said that to me. And you know, so she coaches herself now. She still runs a lot, and that's great to see. So I mean, you know, so she was not shy about telling me it's a water buffalo day, just you know, and she presented a way that you just I thought it was funny as hell, like serious but funny the way she presented it, right? So I think that's important for women to understand that and not be shy about it, because you know, I think nowadays too, a lot of women are taking they might be on certain things that they don't see their period or whatever, right? So I think that's, you know, they've got to be careful there. I don't know the subject material that much, but I remember when, have you met Ida? Ida Vicious. So when Ida was coaching here, she got something going for the women, our women athletes. She set up a series of online presentations for them with different doctors and stuff like that. And I thought she was great. It was great to have her here and taking charge of her female athletes, which was wonderful. So she's now out in Vancouver, just had a baby, and got a job out at Lululemon in their head office in Vancouver.
Oh, that's great.
So so kind of miss her there, but she was very good for that. The female athlete triad, basically, and you know, so I think it's important for women to look at that. The young woman that won nationals, you know, I don't know if you saw her, but you know, it's kind of I think she might. I don't want to say anything that's going to rile anybody, but I better stop there before I say much. But you know, you just need people that are going to be in your sport that won't take eating, you know, and figure if I don't eat, the thinner I am, the faster I'll run, right? So you still want healthy women, and that's important that they're seeing their period. I think, from my perspective, I think it's very important for them, because the damage later, nobody knows what the damage is later on. I don't know. You know, so you need to be concerned there, basically.
So you mentioned a few names. There must be like hundreds, I don't know, maybe thousands of athletes that you've coached. How do you keep in touch? Do you have like an alumni network that you talk to, or how do you kind of keep the
so some
going?
Athletes, you know, I think what you learn in life is that some people will like you and some people won't like you for whatever reason. You can't predict that, and you know, so some athletes I keep in touch with. Some I don't know what they're doing, but for most of the athletes that have come through McGill, I've always had a good rapport with them, and I think that's so important. You know, guys like we had Jean-Nic Duval here. We've had a host, Sarah Khan, I stay in touch with. Uh, not so much Linda Thayer. Stay in touch with Doug Pennick. He ran Gretchen. I don't know if you remember Gretchen Dumoulin. Gretchen was a girl that came here and was never a runner. But I met Gretchen. I saw her at basically every class, every kind of fitness class around the building. And I finally said to her, I saw her in the clinic. This is when I said, I knew I'd see you here sooner or later and I just invited her out to run, and I got Sarah to take her out for a run. And Gretchen became, she suffered from anorexia, and hers was a good story because I walked into Molson Stadium, was the old Molson Stadium. I walked into the Molson Stadium with her for a workout one day, and she said, just casually said, "Oh, there's Trevor Linden." Going like, how the hell does she know Trevor Linden? And that's when the Canadians had traded for him, and he was on the far side of the track, and we just stepped on the track, and she goes, "There's Trevor Linden." So then she introduced me to Trevor, and Trevor basically said he was playing for Vancouver at the time when Gretchen was there, and he said I could pick Gretchen out of a crowd of thousands of people. He used to visit her in the hospital, so that's how sick she was. So Gretchen is now counseling youngsters on eating disorders, basically. And Gretchen also, one of the funny stories of Gretchen was a good story, as I told you. She started off, and we went to Sherbrooke for the Sherbrooke meet, Verrior, and she finished probably dead last in one of the 1500 meter race or something like that. And they took her for testing. And I was like pissed. I'm going like, you're testing this girl? Like, she's dead last? What drug do you think she could be on that she runs so well to finish dead last? You got to be wasting money to test that girl that's finished dead last. So I said, Gretchen's a tree hugger as well. I said, this girl eats probably not a meat eater. And Gretchen ended up, when we hosted one of the CIs here at McGill, she ended up finishing 4th in the 3,000 meters, and she was upset at nationals. And I looked at her and said, Gretchen, you cannot be upset. I said, seriously, from where you started to finishing 4th at nationals, there's no way on earth you have accomplished way more than I've ever thought you would accomplish. Okay. And the thing with Gretchen, the internet was just kind of starting up back then, and go on in line, and I'd ask her not to run these 10K road races, and I'd see she ran a 10K road race. Then we go to nationals at Waterloo. What's that field called that they have there? The ice field, Columbia Ice Field.
Yeah.
So the race was around on the Columbia ice fields, and she ran like crap. And I said, you need rest. So you're not taking your rest. So you have a week off coming up now. Please take your week off. I didn't have to tell her anymore. She realized that she overdid it in the summer. Took her a week off and had a tremendous indoor season. So she's one that came up that basically never ran track before, but got to youth sports and finished 4th in the 3,000 meters. So I thought that's a tremendous accomplishment for somebody who's never done this sport before, and really, got to a high level. And was upset she didn't get a medal. So I was happy for her that she finished 4th. I said, "You've scored points for the team. Do you know that you've scored points for our team?" So I think there's that story with her. I think one of the best stories I've had though is I had a very interactive group with like Rosie Mullins, Alex Hutchison, Doug Pennick, Melanie Bassett. So that group of athletes is probably one of my most interactive group of distance runners. And so we go to Western to race there. And back in those days, it was 5K and 10K. So the 10K was obviously 2 loops, and 5K was 1 loop. So I addressed the girls first. So we're all in the hotel in London in the basement, and we have a room, and I'm talking to them, and I said, talk to the girls. It's 5K, how to approach it, blah 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 blah. And then I get to the men, and so the men have to run 2 laps, right? So I just kind of I said, I'm talking to the guys, and the girls are there, and I said, well, guys, do me a favor. So certain part of the speech, just don't shoot your load too soon. And I go, holy fuck, what did I just say? I'm gonna lose my job here. I'm going like, and there's like a pregnant pause. There's like a pause in the room, and the girls just end up just erupt into laughter. Just erupt into laughter. And I go, oh my God. I'm saying to myself, I got a great group of kids here because I'm thinking, awesome, they're gonna go back and tell Bob Dubel that don't shoot your load too soon. And I remember like Rosie just pissing her pants with laughter. And the other girls are just laughing their heads off, and the guys get into it. And Brad Young was there as well too, I think. And I just kind of go, I got a great group of kids here, and that's one of my most dynamic group of kids that graduated from McGill. That a lot of them are doing super well.
Yeah.
Matthew O'Halloran, another guy. So and that group, I used to get all these terms, you know, like we get on the bus, and I say either you're on the bus or you're on the bus. And so Brad was kind of like, is DB stupid or what? So then Brad would do his research and come back. He said, DB's on point. He's on point. And so we had like even Brad came to McGill, and Brad and I were always duking it out. But I think Brad told me later on, I said, DB, the guys were feeding you with that kind of stuff. Like if I didn't come to practice, I'd say I was watching the Blue Jays play baseball because so Brad then went to UVic, right? Brad went to UVic and came back. And it was a different guy. It was a different guy. Okay. So, and then after that, we got along just great, you know, and then Brad became a coach. And I thought that was really, and the guy was way stricter than me. Like he was really a hammer guy, putting the hammer down, you know? So that was my most interactive group in terms of the athletes coaching back then. That group was really very, very interactive with me, basically. I really enjoy that. Enjoy kids who have personalities. I enjoy if they have personalities that makes it way more fun, and they're not afraid to ask questions, not afraid to approach you and stuff like that. It's you know, you're only as good as the athletes you have, right? And the athletes, you can talk to them and get them to do certain things, but if they give you energy, it's way more fun. You come up with better lines, you're more funny, you're more animated. It just makes it a lot better. It's really.
You mentioned Brad became a coach. How many other people have gone on to become coaches? Like I know there's Ashraf is coaching, and Jake just got into it. What do you think of others that came through and then became a coach after?
I'm trying to think. There are a few others I think that might have gone into coaching, but I think for the most part, a lot of those people went into business and are different ventures. I know Melanie Bassett is down in Florida with at least 2 clinics, physiotherapy clinics, where she's specializing in Parkinson's, treating patients with Parkinson's disease. And I know a host of Doug Pennick is worked for Goldman Sachs, now works for himself, has his own business. Actually he funds startups, and he comes to Montreal quite often. I spend quite a bit of time with him actually. And then Hutch is a writer. He's probably one of the brightest kids that came to McGill. He's you know, he was doing physics and he was a musician. He won officer as a midget, but then I think he suffered from mono after that. But probably one of the most talented guys I've seen here as well. He just wasn't lucky. He should have won U Sports that year when we hosted cross country. 1 year we hosted cross country, but he finished second to Shabu. And I ran into some disappointments as well. That same year, we had the #1 team in the country in cross country, and everything that could go wrong did. So we had girls with anorexia and all kinds of stuff. One of my best girls suffering from anorexia at that time. But we're 10 deep. Our women's team was 10 deep. And I remember going to bed a couple of nights before the race, and everything was falling apart. And I'm just lying on my bed. I roll over, look up at the ceiling, and I said to myself, fuck it, what can you do? And I just
was 96? Was the year that Waterloo won, the girls?
Yes. We were way stronger than Waterloo.
Did you ever, I feel like Brett must have told you the story, but I remember, so I was first year and our guys team was terrible, but the girls were all 5th year, like with Sarah Dillabaugh and Judith Leroy. But what Brett did was he had them take 4 days off they didn't run the week of nationals. They took 4 days off, and then they maybe went for a little run on Friday, and that was it. And they were quite against it. They didn't want to, and he's like, no, you're gonna take. So they were super, rested and
Right.
peaked.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah. Yeah.
one of his things. It was good. It's a good lesson. Like, I think sometimes people don't take enough time off for the race, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
because they're worried, but
Yeah.
you're not going to lose any fitness. You're just going to be
Yeah.
rested.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between taking time off and being injured, right? Because if you're injured and you take 4 days off, it's going to affect you negatively. Whereas if you take time off, it's a different psyche. It's a totally different psyche, which I think because my coach at Tennessee, Joey Haynes, I remember I was ragging him one day, coach, I need to do more. I need to do more. I need to do more. I need to train harder. I got to train harder. And he said to me, he says, Will Dennis, ain't an awful lot you can do 2 weeks before the race to make your performance any better, but there sure is a whole lot you can do to make it worse. And, and I live with with that line from Joey Haynes, because it makes so much sense. And it's so true that, within 2 weeks of a race, not a lot you can do to make your performance any better. You're there, but there sure is a whole lot you can do to make it worse. And that's something that I've lived by since I left Austin Peay, basically. Just really good words to live by, So so that's interesting about Brent and the girls from Waterloo. So so that year our team was, as I said to you, our team was 10 deep. I had Robin Hurley from London, I had Tambra Dunn, I had who else was there? I had Melanie Chouanière. I'm trying to remember if I don't know if I had Linda, but the girls I had, we'd have won had they ran that day without any issues, without anorexia and that type of stuff. Robin had her worst race that year, the worst race that day. We'd have won that meet hands down. It was one of those things. We ended up finishing third. Third on the women's side, and we never expected to be third on the men's side. So that was a bonus for me that both our teams finished third that year. Our men were third, and our women were third. But I thought our women were strong enough. And another time we should have won youth sports again. This was in London with Linda Thayer and Melanie Chouanière. And what happened was that Mel came down with mono. And told me I saw the doctor on a Wednesday, then gave me a phone call and said the doctor suggests she doesn't run. And not that it would get any worse, but more for the fact that she could fall and rupture her spleen. So, and that was also the year of our former Governor General. I don't know if you ever knew, she was at McGill, Julie Payette.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. So she ran for us for a semester, and it wasn't a great experience. But the media had contacted me when she got named as the Governor General by Trudeau, and I just told the guys, I never responded to the call. That's saying that if you have nothing good to say about somebody, say nothing. I just never responded. And later on, I just got back to him. I said, sorry, I went for a bike ride, forgot my phone at home. And, and then the rest is history, right? So I never thought it was for me to say anything, because then she basically played herself out in the media. And that was what we saw with her here at McGill. Yeah. So, it wasn't a great experience at all. Yeah, unfortunately, fortunately for her. Yeah. And then you didn't want to seem like sour grapes as well, right? So I thought that was one of the best decisions I ever made in my life, is to keep my mouth shut. Yeah.
So, do you have any coaching regrets, like things you would have done differently, like not keeping your mouth shut for something or something like that?
Yeah, I have regrets, and we're all gonna have regrets. And I think probably if I had to do it all over again, I probably wouldn't go into coaching. I wouldn't make it. Eventually I turned it into my career, and I wouldn't do that again unless I was getting paid more. Yeah, that's one thing I wouldn't have done. Do I regret the journey? I've met a lot of great people along the way through sport. I've traveled for myself. I've traveled because of sport. It's opened a lot of doors, met a lot of nice people, met a lot of great kids, kids that I'm in touch with still. And I think that's, so we never know where life will turn. I backed into coaching. I never finished school and said I want to become a coach. I never ever looked at coaching. I never wanted to teach in high school. That's one thing I never wanted to do because I couldn't take the behavior of the kids, so I never wanted to teach in high school. And then I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I kind of backed into coaching, did some other things, and then just kind of backed into coaching. But as I said, I would, if I had to do it all again, I'd probably do something and coach part-time. So then I just kind of feel that if I want to walk away from it, I can. I'm getting towards the twilight of my career right now, and would expect that I'm 67, and but I've seen my high school coach go into his 90s, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm not a cold weather person, so I wouldn't like to stay here in the cold weather in the winter.
Right.
I'd like to be in the warm weather someplace. And then I like to ride my bike now. And basically, riding in this weather would never be fun. And, so that's the one thing that I look at is, and for many years, even when I don't coach in the summer, if I'm not coaching, I kind of go, well, what do I do with my time now? It's like 5 o'clock. What do I do?
Yeah.
Do I sit and watch TV? What do I do? So I'm kind of lost at that time because I've coached, for so long in the States. The one thing I don't like here is how late we train, because in the US, our practice time was 3 o'clock.
Right.
So 3, you're done well before 5, or you're done by 5 if it's a longer practice. I can't remember ever finishing at 5. Go to your dorm, you take a shower, you head to the cafeteria, the training table, you have dinner, and then you hit the library by 6 o'clock, right? So you can study, get some good studying from 6 to 9 or 6 to 10 or 6 to 11. And so I find here, because we train so late, the class schedule, that's another thing at McGill, is the class schedule is just horrific. And I think a lot of it has to do with the number of students they've taken in. They hire a lot of part-time instructors. So they work in a day, then they come to teach. So we have kids who will come in management, and they have a management course that starts at 6 o'clock.
Right.
So I find that that's really a tough thing for us, is that the time of day when they train, because then they've got to make sure they get their studying in before practice, because chances are after practice, they have some energy left, but they're not that hyped up to practice. So I basically, in terms of where I am right now in coaching, is that I have an aunt and a cousin in the West Island that I'm in the will to take care of my cousin. He suffers from Down syndrome. He's 50 years old.
Okay.
And I figure, what kills you in university coaching, I mentioned that before, is administrative work, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're aware of it, but I've been getting a lot of flack over the team challenge meet I had last year. Have you heard about that?
No.
So the officials didn't want to come and work the meet here on the 30th of November because John Monroe had written a letter, just a stinging rebuke that, things are better at Sherbrooke and Laval, and just he never did an investigation to see what the deal was. So when Derek came on board, Derek Covington, he contacted me, and I said, Derek, I didn't commit a crime. I said, I didn't commit a crime here. I said, we had some issues with the officials, and nothing negative, is that they had the horizontal jumps end up lasting longer than they should, but the meet was never late. So that crew, they only had one crew for the long and triple jump, and the entries had mistakenly been put on 2 different sites, on tracking and AVS. So I didn't realize that the entries were on AVS. So then when Rashid told me, I got the entries. So we had like 36 people in the long jump that shouldn't have been there, right? The numbers. So the officials complained that, yeah, we didn't have enough volunteers at the meet and blah, 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 blah.
Hmm.
But now I come to find out, from talking to Alfredo, talking to Derek, that the officials complained, they had huge complaints about the Nationals last summer.
Mhm.
Huge complaints about the Nationals. And John, you've helped me with meets before, so I go out of my way to make sure that the officials were treated very well. I
Yeah.
go out of my way to make sure that they good, as a matter of fact, you thought they were eating too much junk food, remember?
I
Yeah,
remember I was like,
yeah, yeah.
I was gonna help them
Yeah.
with their diet, and then they revolted. It was not a good idea. Yeah, yeah, that's right.
I
But they
forgot
always,
about that. I forgot that you had helped me with that because
yeah,
I go out of my way to make sure they're well taken care of. I
yeah.
really do. And so I was really offended that, but then I started doing some reflection and realized that in the early days of the team challenge, we didn't, I don't remember getting a list of volunteers. I might have a few kids around that help, but the officials used to do all the volunteer stuff themselves, like raking the pit,
Mhm.
putting the bar back up. They stopped doing that stuff now.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I had to reach into Ontario to get an official to run the meet. And then one of my kids is from Tahiti. She was injured, and
Oh,
she's got her bronze medal in the World Athletics
okay.
official business.
Okay, interesting.
So she took charge of the horizontal jump through the federation.
Hmm.
So it was so I was really offended, but now I realize it's not you, Dennis. The problem is if they don't have enough officials at the federation, they're trying to rectify that situation.
Mhm.
And and so we were able to run this meet, and it went off very well.
Mhm.
And I got very good help from Derek and Emily.
Mhm.
What's Emily's last name?
Rochefort.
Yeah, got very good. They were super. They were super in their help towards the meet. And Derek was just telling me, a lot of people have signed up for the team challenge coming up now in January. So
Mhm.
so that was a rude awakening for me that the officials thought. And you know what, John? I've always tried to improve the meet here by when we go to the US. I brought back a lot of things. I was at the meet at BU and saw the sprint times being populated so quickly.
Yeah.
So I go, do we have an automatic reader in track and field? So I go and I knock on the timing door, expect the timer to yell at me.
Yeah.
And that guy opens the door and he says, Dennis Barrett. His name was Rick Berman. He timed at Dartmouth relays for many, many years.
Okay.
So he remembered me. And I go in and he showed me timing the meet was just him and his daughter. Okay. And they did everything upstairs, the lap counting, they did upstairs.
Mhm.
And what I took away from that is that's where I first saw the hip number on the right-hand side
Mhm.
of the shoulder because they were counting the laps and they had something called Identilink, counting the laps of all the athletes. So they knew exactly what was going on up there. And there was no official downstairs counting the laps. And so I brought that back. I was the first one to bring that back to Montreal. The sprinters running out at the start of the 60-meter,
Yeah.
I cut that off as well because
Yeah.
I saw that down there. So
Yeah.
I came back up and I went on the track myself and told them
Yeah.
no runouts, no
Yeah.
runouts.
Yeah. Well, I remember
Do
we
your
did
runout
that
one
with the
quicker.
starter, and we said I gave the starter like a time. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
we're gonna do every minute. We're starting a
yes,
race,
yeah,
no
boom,
matter
boom,
what.
boom.
Yeah.
That's right, that's right.
Yeah. And that's
So
even slow. Every minute for a 61 a minute, like in the US, they're way faster
yeah,
already.
exactly. So can you imagine if we had people running out every we have 16, 18 heats of 60s and everybody's doing a run out, we'd be here the whole day. We'd be here the whole day. So I cut that out and stuff like that. And as I said to you, I always want to take care of the officials. I think because it's a volunteer position, but when you volunteer, you can also hold people up for ransom. And I thought that letter that John wrote, because I asked him, I said, John, we have like 7 officials at the finish line. I go, why do we need 7 officials at the finish line? So he wrote that down. He was complaining about the amount of officials, blah, blah. Well, yeah, because it was a legit question. And I got to change something else now. We have an official that's standing at the end of the sprint lanes between lane 4 and 5. Like, what are you doing there?
Yeah.
What are you doing there? Like, it doesn't make sense. So I'm going to get rid of that in the next meet. I don't want anybody getting killed at the meet because somebody could trip and run her over, right?
Yeah.
So basically, so that was really a rude awakening for me, and it got me in trouble here at McGill with my boss here. And I said to my boss, I said, I'm by myself. I'm organizing here at McGill. I said, I'm virtually by myself. You go to other schools, and there's a legit track club at Sherbrooke. There's a legit track club at Laval. You've been on the Olympic club here. We have no board.
Mm.
Where's our board? There's no board.
Yeah.
No board. So what do you do when you have no board? You gotta do everything yourself. So and you ran a club. It's not easy to run a club. You know that
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
easy. Okay, so there's just a lot of things there that I thought we could do better, and that's a big part of the problem, basically.
So last question, and you kind of alluded to it, but maybe I see if we can pin you down or no, because I remember it was in Quebec City, and Joe Bourgeois came over. I was talking to you, and he came over, and he's like, "Dennis, you're still here. When are you gonna retire?" And you kind of were like, I don't know. And this was, pre-hip surgery, and I think, I have to say, I've noticed, since you're a lot happier since you got your hip surgery. It sucks to walk around with pain, right? So
Yeah. I didn't realize it was my hip. I was in a lot of pain.
yeah. So do you like how close are we to the end of the Barrett era? Like, are when? Because what's going to happen? Also, that's the second question after you go.
So there's someone that wanted to groom someone to take the job, and I would envision. I asked them to host youth sports here in 2026, and then I'd retire after that. But we'll see. They said no, they can't host in 2026. We need to get a new track. So if we get a new track, we can host. Then I'd probably stay on. But I'd probably like to start relinquishing some of my paperwork.
Right.
That's what I like to do. Yeah, that would be the caveat for me is relinquish some of my paperwork.
Yeah. And you have some young coaches that might be able to step in, you think, or?
I am talking with the federation, talking with Derek, and we're looking at some possibilities. That we can have maybe some kind of a coach from the federation that they're hiring that can set up something like that. Okay. So just trying to start seeing out different ideas. There's no set plan at this point, but just trying to get somebody, ease them into the position that that basically, and let them know how it's done, basically, because there's if they just come in, they won't have a clue what goes on, right? So it's to show somebody what they need to do here to make the program work.
Right.
I think certain things that have been done here, that it was done for me. I think I got lucky that Derek Drummond basically pushed me to become a full-time coach. And if it was, I don't think for somebody else it would have happened, because I'm the only level 2 sport here that has a full-time coach. So that is, that's quite something, basically. I don't take that lightly at all.
No, for sure. Well, I guess we'll see, but it's a big shoes to fill, and it sounds like, I mean, if you're gonna wait till you get a new track, it might be a while, eh?
Well, it could be. It doesn't have to be that long. It's trying to find a rich uncle or somebody like that, or somebody that's kicking some funds,
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that it's not too long. It'd be nice to get a new track. And it'd be nice to see it come in before I leave. Yeah. I'd be happy for the program, then turning the program ropes over to somebody else. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much for the conversation. It's always great to talk to you, and usually we don't get to talk, like, because it's at a meet or and you're busy or something, so it's nice to just
it's nice
talk
to
and
chat.
hear
Nice
from
to
you.
chat with you. Thanks for the invite. Really good to bring up some of those topics, and it hasn't been an easy go, but it's been a fun go at times, so it has been. You kind of know the journey, whatever, and I think it's important. And John, what I like about life at times is that we have our differences, but you move on in life, right? You got to forget about those things and just be good to people. I think that's the bottom line, right?
That's it. Yeah, for sure.
So awesome. No, I appreciate that. I always happy to see you on the canal when I'm riding by or whatever. Yell your name out, John.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Well, thanks, Dennis.
Thank you.